Hello and welcome to another episode of the Federal Church Presents Better Than Bloomberg. Continuing our coverage of the 2023 global financial system collapse, the worst ever, where the Federal Reserve and other central banks are going all in on making you poor. Unless you're the 99.999%. But a pretty good note here. How you can tell, things are about to implode. Other than, for example, I've noticed that there are now problems with my internet. Problems I've never had, using this stuff for, over a decade now. And all of a sudden, my internet's being throttled. I wonder why that is. It's probably because the money changers don't want people hearing about reality as their, financial system collapses. And they'll try to spin that too as a paranoia. Oh, it's crazy. You're just whatever. You just have a mental illness for calling the collapse or the insolvent banks insolvent. Because you can, just like I said, you can take a look at their balance sheets and you can see, oh, look, it's insolvent. You take one 5-minute look at it. You don't even need 5 minutes, you need 1 minute. Oh, the bank's insolvent. Probably shouldn't keep your money there. Like that Zion's Bank example I was talking about. Which brings us to this example, actually, or this note from Zero Hedge, which is pretty indicative of the collapse. Not just like what I was saying, where, the Reverend here, for some reason keeps getting drugged. Because I'm sure they don't like people, hearing the truth. And they're desperately trying to say, oh, look, he has a mental illness. You need to give him psychiatric medications. Things aren't collapsing. He's just crazy. No, it's collapsing. And like I said, you can see it there in black and white too. Especially their own fucking goddamn, financial statements. With some of the simplest shit on earth to ever fucking goddamn analyze. But, oh my god. All of a sudden, I got problems with my internet. I can't upload stuff anymore. Oh my god, everybody's just going to pretend. Even the internet's going to pretend. Oh, let's just pretend his internet doesn't work, and then all of our shit won't collapse anymore. No, it's still insolvent. Your financial system is done. It's insolvent. But what I was saying was that, a few days ago, I had mentioned just one example of how you could take a look at almost the entire banking system is insolvent. It's failed. It has no money to actually pay people their deposits, if they all wanted their deposits back at the same time. And the example I gave was Zion's Bank. Because if you take a look at their balance sheet, their entire capital reserves, 1/3 is in the U.S. toiletries, which are all hosed now. And it gets worse by the day because inflation only gets worse by the day. Especially as they bail these banks out and print more money. Like how Yellen essentially promised to print out $18 trillion, which is 3/4 of the United States' annual GDP. I mean, it's fucking insane. And that was just to cover deposits. Now, what you're looking at here is that really entertaining Zion's Bank example. And they won't be the only bank to do this. Probably damn near every bank has this problem to an extent. But Zion's Bank, if you take a look at their balance sheet, their capital reserves are 1/3 U.S. toiletries, which, okay, you can try to, kick the can down the road saying that, we're going to mark these, we're not going to mark to market what it's actually worth now if you actually tried to sell it, which wouldn't be anything really because nobody's going to take it. And then, or hold to maturity, which is even stupider, where essentially they're saying, oh, we'll only mark this once it matures, and hopefully by then all the inflation going away, which it won't. It'll only get worse by the day. But now they have the Fed promising, okay, now you can take our toiletries and we'll pay you par value for them. We'll pay you the entire amount, so you don't have to take a discount or whatever, and you don't lose any money. Okay, that's great. But that's only for 1/3 of their capital reserves. 2/3 of their capital reserves are in that. This little beautiful note that my good buddy here, my best friend Zero Hedge over here, just put up. Wherein 2/3 of their capital reserves are in those asset-backed securities, more specifically mortgage-backed securities, and even stupider, commercial real estate mortgages, which are absolutely imploding. The residential houses, residential mortgages likely will start seeing that sort of implosion. It's already seeing the lower value, of course, because of the interest rate risk, but the underlying value of the bond is derived from the real estate and the expected payments that you get for it, which, if those values implode, you don't get those payments, especially when people walk away from the properties. But in terms of the residential ones, they'll start seeing it looking like the commercial real estate, likely within the next few months or so. But don't quote me. This is just the Jesus bringing in his prophecy through your divine right of holiness here, the Reverend. But the commercial real estate is already imploding, and these mortgage bonds that were, for example, 3/4 of Zion Bank's capital reserves there, the money they use to pay you your withdrawals when you demand your deposit back. Why they're called demand deposit. That's why they're called demand deposits and depository institutions. They don't have the money to give you because these are already worth less because of the interest rate risk. Interest rates went up and the underlying bond, or the bond price, goes down. But also the underlying of the bond is not worth nothing, especially in terms of commercial real estate. And it's smaller to mid-sized banks like Zion's Bank there. They're the ones that are loaning out these sorts of loans, these commercial real estate loans. So, basically, you can see all that flow. And the best part is, and again, that's 3/4 of their capital reserves that they need for your deposits. And the best part is, the Fed isn't going to be, at least not without their, not at least with their current, little facility they've made to buy the fucking pivot facility. They're not covering that. And even if they did, guess what? Not only do you have, the 18 trillion just for deposits, but you also have the trillions, actually, in this case, it could actually reach quadrillions in terms of all the derivatives it impacts. Because even if it did, even if these people were smart enough to hedge it, well, there are people that have to pay those hedges off. They're the counterparty. And if they don't pay them, there's that counterparty risk that the Fed, promises they'll cover too, I guess. The Treasury promises to cover. And that's shitloads of money printing. So even if you still have your deposit back, guess what? It's going to be worthless in terms of dollars. And this is what you're watching here. And I only say this because as of right now, so basically something like Zion Bank's, balance sheet, 3/4 of it is worthless. And it's not backed up by the Federal Treasury. In the 2008 collapse, they did buy up a bunch of this crap. But they also made you poorer at the same time. They had to print money to do it. So even if they did come to the rescue of these garbage banks, it won't matter. Because your deposits, you might still have it, as one of these money changers, Peter Schiff puts it. You'll have your deposit, but it'll be worth nothing with the dollars denominated in. So it doesn't fucking matter. But the beauty of this little note from Buddy Zero Hedge here, the Reverend Zero Hedge, echoes of New Century's collapse, that was 2008, amid sudden fire sale of real estate loans, as one bank sees 40% downside. Now again, why would these banks all of a sudden start fire saling their real estate loans? Like the kind that I pointed out with Zion's Bank. What was that, just about a week ago? Because again, they just realized here's more of these retarded trash, by the way. This is why you're getting poor. Because again, these retards don't like hearing about reality. They just like to live in their little ignorant delusions. until they're, well, even if they are in poverty already. That's the mental illness of it. But what I was saying just a week ago, because I saw some of these dipshit pieces of shit following me around, throwing their little shit football around too, where I kindly had to remind them, you and your stupid problems cause, especially, those times when my people, that's why your bank's failing. And they didn't like hearing about reality. But I guess other people heard about reality too. Where you take a look at these balance sheets and they're holding these worthless mortgage bonds. And this is worse than 2008. Because in 2008, you could attribute the mortgage bonds failing, essentially due to things that should not have happened. There were a lot of underwriting practices that shouldn't have happened. There were people who shouldn't have gotten loans. And while that might be a few examples of that this time around, it's solely imploding for one of two reasons. One, interest rates have to go up after printing trillions of dollars to pay people to not do anything, to pay them to be stagnant and not produce anything. Of course, that will cause inflation. And now you have to combat that inflation with higher interest rates. Two, the other part is that these real estate values also implode, especially if you're a regular reader or Zero Hedge. You'll see them calling for the Big Short 2.0, as he calls it. Oh, don't forget you're on Celebrity 2.0. We don't need your stupid little media there to tell you about reality. In fact, they'll censor it on the stupid, dinosaur media. But on his little notes that he's had in the past, he's shown how, commercial real estate is imploding. Because, people don't go to the office anymore. Once they had COVID, people saw that it's, incredibly unproductive to spend hours per day commuting and that sort of thing. It's just nicer to work from anywhere on Earth. And aside from that, the cities have descended into basically animal-like chaos, and people don't do that either. And then now, you're seeing as the interest rates go up, it'll further implode commercial real estate, because again, the ability to finance these things just aren't that easy anymore. The terms aren't that easy. There's no more easy money policy, loose money policy. And that's the same for residential real estate. So it's not because people in 2008, they didn't understand any exotic derivatives trades or had any models that were stupidly made and had made no sense, blow up, and say, or have banks blow up because they didn't, accurately model things. So that's another bullshit thing, by the way. But simply because they were dipshits. They, for some reason, did not consider the fact that interest rates would rise when it should have been obvious years ago when they were printing trillions of dollars in 2020. So it's not like 2008. It's much worse. And why do you think people will now have a fire sale of real estate loans, these mortgage-backed securities? Because if you're the last one holding it, you're the bag holder, guess what? You're screwed. So looks like people finally got in touch with reality. And there's a good clip there of a margin call where, it's a good movie because, in a sense it is true. Some of the things they say are true. If you're not the first one to get rid of the toxic assets, well, you get screwed. So let's go to the note here. Those who peaked below the surface, I guess he meant peakably, of the latest H8 statement, which, as discussed previously, saw the biggest, and I think we put that up already, on the Federal Church here, saw the biggest drop on record in bank loans and leases in the last 2 weeks of March. Again, why is that happening? They don't have any fucking money to loan. They're insolvent. And that's if their bank even exists anymore. I found, actually, let's take a look at the chart here. Sometimes they're worth looking at. Yeah, and you see the change there. In fact, the biggest drop, found another perhaps even bigger surprise. As we detailed over the weekend when breaking down the weekly change in small bank loans and leases by their subcomponents, we found that whereas in the first week after the bank crisis, and again, analyzing this is not difficult. It's literally looking at the balance sheet for 1 minute, and you should be able to tell this is absolute garbage and it will fail. You don't need to be in it, some sort of, PhD or fucking genius to figure this out. Any first year fucking finance student should be able to fucking figure this out. Otherwise, they probably shouldn't be studying that shit. But, that's the level of dipshit you're in. Where they go on Bloomberg and CNBC and have their happy talk and say, everything's gonna be alright. No, it's not. It really isn't. See. Found that whereas in the first week after the bank crisis, the one ending March 15, the bulk of the collapse in loans was in the traditionally volatile C&I space, the latest week was a surprise. That's because while the plunge in C&I loans moderated substantially, don't forget why this is happening too. They continue to have the stupidity on the internet that they're warned about. Don't have around. And then they continue their bullshit thinking it will get them anything but what they were told. It is mentally ill. And again, deranged and delusional, just like believing everything is okay. No, it's not. The bulk of the collapse in loans was in the traditionally volatile C&I space. The latest week was a surprise. That's because while the plunge in C&I loans moderated substantially to just $6.9 billion from $25 billion the week before, the biggest slide was in, again, why is that? The biggest slide was in one of the anchor pillars of the small banking sector, real estate loans. And again, for small and medium-sized banks, this is the bulk of the business. They're the only ones that loan to this sort of thing. In fact, while the biggest drop among small bank loans in the latest week was the $18.7 billion decline in real estate, and again, you can see the marching moron idiocy too, by the way. This is why they're in the situation they're in. They still do not know. This was a continuation of the $19.2 billion drop in the previous week. Combining the 2 weeks adds to a $37.8 billion plunge in real estate loans in the second half of March. This number is notable because it is the biggest since the collapse of the country's then second largest subprime lender, New Century Financial, in March 2007. And like I said, this is worse than the 2008 collapse because this is much more prevalent than it was back then. There was only a few banks back then. This is damn near all of the banks this time around. Which, as most traders over 40 recall, was the catalyst that ushered in the global financial crisis. And again, if you thought that was a global financial crisis, this one, in the coming days, weeks, and months, is going to make it look like it was nothing. And within the year led to the collapse of Bear Stearns and eventually Lehman. This will eventually lead to the collapse of countries, especially in the third world. This is a much worse crisis than 2008, and you see things like the stuff from people like Rickards, who stole my IP by the way, fucking bastard, didn't pay me any royalties. These people cry, or they'll try to BS and say, oh, it'll be fine. They'll get some SDRs printed. Who gives a shit about your SDRs? It's not real money. That's not fucking gold bullion, for example. I mean, you print all the fucking SDRs you want. What's it going to get you? Is it going to get you real food? Is it going to get you real estate, real land? No. It's just some fucking, again, like I use the word construct a lot in the stupid little farce, for example. It's just like this thing. It's just what people believe. If they believe a bank is going to be okay, because it does fractionally reserve stuff, even if you're an absolute idiot, then okay, you believe that. But in reality, your bank's insolvent. It's just like that. Oh, you think you're going to print SDRs? Well, you just made up some fucking numbers in a fucking computer. What did that fix? Let's take a look here. Well, bank real estate loans. Yeah, of course, for the past month, we have been warning that real estate, and especially commercial real estate, is the ticking solvency time bomb. Again, they were right, too. But the even better part was just as I described it, and the Zion's Bank is a good example of it. In fact, let's take a look at that and see if we can bring it up. Let's see here. Right off the Rupert Murdoch owned, apparently, Wall Street Journal. I did not know this. So you can take a look at it. Here's their net loans. This is basically their capital reserves, right? Where did it go? Total 55. Commercial paper is being screwed to, by the way. So I guess this is a different number from what I saw last time, or they changed it somehow. But half their shit, almost half their shit, is that. And where is it? Actually, this isn't the stuff I was looking at before. Oh, this is the stuff I was looking at. There we go. Where mortgage-backed securities are 2/3 of their essentially capital reserves too. That's essentially what it is. I mean, it's a depository institution. They take your money and invest it, essentially. And then how much of the toiletries do they have? All garbage. All of this is garbage as they, as interest rates rise. And then you take a look at their loans too. Commercial paper shit is getting, destroyed. And if you think about it too, I mean, it's, what would you say? It takes a few more steps in thinking, I guess, right? But when you take a look at those PMIs, those surveys, all of them are saying things like everything's imploding. Well, those industrial loans don't look good either. And then half of them are real estate mortgage loans too. I assume this is to their, residential too. And then they had a lot of MBS stuff, which is likely commercial, just like we're looking at. But the point being, they're garbage. And the underlying is going to be worth nothing. And that's their entire fucking capital reserves. But, Zero Hedge was just saying that stuff, oh, it's just commercial. Yeah, that's the part that he saw. But now we saw it's not just commercial. It's residential. And it's supposedly the risk-free U.S. toiletries that every bank does by convention. And then they're probably so stupid they didn't even bother, hedging the interest rate risk or any of the other currency risk, for example, especially as they're printing money. And now you're going to see all of this as that ticking solvency time. And the best part is, as every day goes on, the inflation just gets worse because they have to print more money to help, try to prevent banks like this from imploding. And then just kind of fuels that fire. And then when those finally mature, they're worth nothing. Or the Fed had to print so much goddamn money to buy them at par. Guess what? Even if the deposits are still there, it's worth nothing. Even though the dollar is still there, it's worth nothing. And that's how it ends when it's damn near all the banks. That ticking solvency time bomb. Because again, they're all insolvent. No matter what bullshit accounting trick they pull, they're insolvent. I guess, another stupid thing done by convention. It's still insolvent. Your money's not there. Even if it was, if they have to print trillions of it, it's not there. It's not there in the value that it was. Within both large and small banks. And the large banks is the entertaining part. Because all the derivatives that involve all of this, there'll be derivatives involving all of those mortgage-backed securities, all of those munis, whatever that stuff is. I don't know what sort of things they got into. Some of those might be over-the-counter. And then all the U.S. toiletries, whatever over-the-counter other crap they have too. The commercial paper bullshit that's imploding too. Guess what? Imploding. What's the word to put it? Not as liquid, maybe? Sorry, they still medicated my damn food and get the dirty line money changers telling useful idiots. But all of this, these are all insolvent. Except those large banks have derivatives upon derivatives upon derivatives involving all of them. Sometimes multiple of them as the underlying. And it'll be in the quadrillions. Yeah, large banks are going under too. Because guess what? Even if just like I keep saying, even if the small bank hedged it, okay, congratulations, you called the hedge right. Now you have the counterparty risk. Is the other bank going to pay up? How's it going to pay? When all that shit blows up, when the entire system implodes, if they're on the hook for more than their bank is worth, for example, like in the Lehman's and Bear Stearns of 2008. If you're on the wrong end of these derivatives and you're on the hook for more than your bank is worth, well, then you get to learn the definition of counterparty risk. And then when the Fed bails them out, they get to cry their moral hazard like they've been crying. But then you get to learn about debasement of currency. So it doesn't really matter. It's all screwed now. Now that the liquidity crisis has crushed several small banks, has been contained courtesy of nearly $500 billion in reserve injections by the Fed, and this is what I was saying too. People like SVB, who had the CEO as former head of the San Francisco Fed, these people weren't dumb. They saw this thing coming. They gave each other, $200 million in loans, their own employees. They sold millions of dollars in stock before they got bailed out. And they made sure to get bailed out first. Because if they didn't get bailed out first, these trillions in reserve injections by the Fed, this isn't going to be continuing forever. It's impossible. So of course, these people who used to work for the Fed know you have to get bailed out first. The rest just get screwed and get to learn what bailments are. And while we previously discussed at length the coming multi-trillion CRE maturity wall, the new Big Short and its record low as focus turns to commercial real estate debt maturity. Oh yeah, look at this too. Commercial real estate debt maturity is $2.5 trillion in the next 10 years. So if it's in trillions, there's nothing there that's going to be good. Increasingly, more are also seemingly starting to notice, just like they noticed the thing it was nicely pointed out that you could take a look at for a few seconds, and why all the equity traders were, basically imploding this bank, right? Look at it. So, what is it, less than half of what it was? Yeah, about half, a little bit more than half of what it was worth. It should be worth anything. They're just running on the hopium that the Federal Treasury will bail them out, which, they're not going to keep doing forever. They can't. As more banks fail, they'll start going to bail-ins, and they get to learn what those are. So increasingly more are also seemingly starting to notice, and what is far more ominously, are taking a page out of the margin call playbook and quietly selling out of their real estate loan exposure. Or to quote Kevin Spacey, this is what the beginning of a fire sale looks like. It was actually pretty good clip. That's what they get for that stupidity, dude. You know what I mean. They're stupid little fucking idiocy on the internet. Kind of like what I'm watching.
Thank you all for coming in a little early this morning. I know yesterday was pretty bad, and I wish I could say that today's going to be less so, but that isn't going to be the case. Now, I'm supposed to read this statement to you all here, but why don't you just read it on your own time, and I'll just tell you what the fuck's going on here. I've been here all night, meeting with the executive committee, and the decision has been made to unwind a considerable portion of the firm's holdings in several key asset classes. The crux of it is, in the firm's thinking, the party's over as of this morning.
Yeah, the party was over about a month
There's going to be considerable turmoil in the markets for the
SVB was the
foreseeable
one to
future.
make sure they were first to get bailed out.
And they believe it is better that this turmoil begin with us. As a result, the firm has decided to liquidate its majority position of fixed income MBS today.
That's the funny part. He has
These are your packets. You will see what accounts you're responsible for today.
And then they're MBS.
I'm sure it hasn't taken you long to understand the implications of this sale on your relationships with your counterparties and as a result
junk debt, actually. But not
on your
U.S.
careers.
toiletries. That's the funny
I have
part.
expressed this reality to the executive committee, and they understand. As a result, If you achieve a 93% sale of your assets, you will receive a $1.4 million one-off bonus. If the floor as a whole achieves a 93% sale, you will get an additional $1.3 million apiece. For those of you who've never been through this before, this is what the beginning of a fire sale looks like. I cannot begin to tell you how important the first hour and a half is going to be. I want you to hit every bite you can find. Dealers, brokers, clients, your mother if she's buying.
And basically everyone else on the
no swaps.
Street there does not know what's going on.
It's outgoing only today.
Kind of like here. I guess they figured it out now.
Obviously, this is not going down the way that any of us would have hoped, but the ground is shifting below our feet. And apparently, there's no other way out. This is obviously a very, very unique situation. If we are successful today, we will have been successful in destroying our own jobs. I cannot promise that any of you, all of you, some of you will be repositioned within the firm. But I can tell you
there's going to be a lot of
very proud of the work that we have done here together.
People that no longer have their jobs in that sector too.
I've been at this place
more importantly, because of the credit crisis,
34 years.
There will be billions.
And I can tell you from experience that people are going to say some very nasty things about what we do here today and about what you've dedicated a portion of your lives to. But have faith that in the bigger picture, our skills have not been wasted. We have accomplished much, and our talents have been used for the greater good. There's your packets. Get to work.
This was a good movie. I mean, it's realistic in that sense. Oh, which way? By the way, another Bad Banks movie is a good idea. That I was floating out there as an idea to do. The Deutsche Bank will be fine.
City, this is Eric.
Give me Elliot.
City.
Hey, it's Will Emerson.
Oh yeah, how are you?
I'm alright. How's the traveling strike?
Busting my ass as always.
You see, that's what I tried to tell you, John. Why do you think I'm single?
I know you did. What can I do for you?
Listen, I just got the tap on my shoulder, and we've got some risk over here that we need to move. So today, it looks like my loss is your gain.
What kind of size are we talking?
Should be on your screen. I just sent it.
Jesus. Where does this land?
96 on the dollar.
91.
All three, and we're done at 94.
93 and a half.
Done.
The real funny part is
Hello, gorgeous.
Will, what's happening over there?
Well, today's moving day.
Look at you guys so worked up about
You think they tell me anything? All I know is that today my loss is your gain. Now you're a friendly, so I'll come to you first. I got 270 mil, 15-year payout, a point and a half above par.
Where's it from?
Where's it from? Do you care?
No, not really. Now, where's the trick? I'm hearing things
Alexis,
that you guys are
I'm
scared
only
of.
sharing this with you right now. 85.
Done.
Deutsche?
It's Will Emerson.
Fuck you, you lying bastard.
Are you still angry about that?
Word's out. I'm hanging up. Meryl,
Lawrence,
what the fuck are you guys doing over there?
little spring cleaning.
That is not what I'm hearing.
Alright, Lawrence, are you a buyer?
I'm not sure anymore. Where at?
Well, it sounds like I should be asking you where.
And what are we talking about here?
375 mil, 30-year mixed.
Fuck me.
Are you with me on this?
63 cents.
Oh, fuck you, I'm hanging out.
63.
Let me call my man here, I'll come back to you in 5.
Maybe 55 and 5.
Well, alright then, stay on the line. Sam, pick up the phone. Sam, get on the line!
Yeah.
I got Lawrence in there.
Where are we?
63 cents.
Jesus. On what?
375 mixed 30.
Get him to 65 and hit it.
Are you fucking kidding me? That's What is that? That's a $131 million loss in a single trade.
I understand. Hit it.
Hey, Lawrence, we're Philip Killer 65.
It's Phil.
Oh, look. Maybe that's a reference to why you're in the situation to begin with. My beachfront mansion. To be sure, it's no longer just us that are focusing on the potential of commercial real estate to be the next market crash catalyst. And, while he's right, he deserves his accolades for being right about commercial real estate. It's now all real estate and U.S. toiletries. So as Bloomberg wrote over the weekend, almost $1.5 trillion with a T of U.S. commercial real estate debt comes due for repayment before the end of 2025. And this is what I was just saying. The big question facing those borrowers is who's going to lend to them? Who's going to buy their crap? Who's going to buy their crap at MBS? Nobody. Except maybe they'll hope the Fed, buys it for more than it's worth and make everybody poorer with printing money. Well, there is another even bigger question, as the video clip above suggests, but we'll get back to it in a second. Bloomberg quotes a recent must-read note by Morgan Stanley entitled Scaling Maturity Walls, available to the pro-subs, in which the bank's credit strategies write the refinancing risks are front and center for owners of properties from office buildings to stores and warehouses. Well, it's kind of funny. If all the banks are insolvent and they can't loan any money, who's going to be refinancing to them? And again, here are more than marching moron stupidity. That's why your retirement's gone. Fucking idiots. Adding that the maturity wall here is front-loaded, so are the associated risks. Looking at the charts below, Morgan Stanley's James Egan writes that roughly 400 to 450 billion worth of commercial real estate loans are scheduled to mature in 2023. This is on par with 2022, and both of these years are the largest on record. 12. From there, it doesn't get any easier as maturities climb each year until 2027, reaching over 550 billion. And while the maturity walls within other class sets might not be very front-loaded, the issue within commercial real estate is happening right now. Charts here. Yep, looks pretty good. As these maturities come due, Egan warns that he is left with many more questions than answers. Chief among them are, who's going to be responsible for refinancing these loans as they mature? That story differs depending on property type. The multifamily space is growing very reliant on the GSEs over the years. From 2023 to 2027, 46% of maturities are currently guaranteed by the GSEs. As a reminder, in the GSE space, borrowers will ask lenders for a loan. Who's going to loan you when they don't have any capital reserves? And if the property meets the eligibility criteria for agency guarantee, then the lender should generally feel comfortable that the loan will be guaranteed by the agency when quoting a rate lock. Again, more stuff that has a counterparty risk. The agencies will inspect the property at different times depending on the exact program, but given that the majority of agency-guaranteed multifamily properties are held by borrowers with multiple properties, there is an incentive to continue to work with the agencies. And that just sounds like more money printing to me. And more people poor. But the real punchline is that as these maturities are picking up, the single largest lender in the commercial real estate landscape is the one that is now under the most scrutiny. Regional banks, something we've been warning about for months, because again, they're the ones who make these loans. That's their core business, and now they're imploding. As Morgan Stanley notes in the next chart, in the years since the Great Financial Crisis, origination volumes and the share of that volume has varied. But since 2014, the trend has clearly been away from commercial mortgage-backed securities and towards regional banks. You can kind of see that there too. Meanwhile, as we discussed previously, rising rates and worries about defaults have already hurt CMBS deals. Sales of the securities without government backing, and again, they don't have government backing, fell about 80% in the first quarter from a year earlier. It's only U.S. toiletries that the Fed is buying up now. The role that banks have played in this ecosystem not only as lenders but also as buyers will compound the wave of refinancing coming. Who's going to refinance it? Unfortunately, when apartment blocks are excluded, the scale of the problems facing banks becomes even starker. As much as 70% of the other commercial real estate loans that mature over the next 5 years are held by banks, according to Morgan Stanley. And again, if there's any derivatives on them, it implodes. Commercial real estate needs to reprice, and alternative ways to refinance the debt are needed, the analysts said. To be sure, it's not all doom and gloom, and as Bloomberg notes, there are some slivers of good news. Conservative lending standards in the wake of the financial crisis provide borrowers, and in turn their lenders, with some degree of protection from falling values. Additionally, sentiment towards multifamily housing also remains much more positive as rents continue to get inflation, by the way. It's hilarious that Bloombergstein will try to cheerlead with this kind of crap. There's a sliver of good news. You have more inflation to make more of the fucking debt more worthless. Additionally, sentiment towards multifamily housing also remains much more positive as rents continue to rise. One reason why Blackstone Real Estate Trust had a positive return in February, even as rising numbers of investors lodge withdrawal requests. Well, because it doesn't beat the actual inflation. And CPI is fudged like the Soviet data. So that's why they're lodging withdrawal requests. The availability of agency-backed loans will help owners of these properties when they need to refinance. Probably not. Alas, with regional banks undergoing because of that too, and unlikely to reboot their lending activity as long as deposit flight continues, which, as discussed last week, has slowed modestly but remains an existential risk to the regional banks, which is unlikely to be resolved as long as the Fed refuses to cut rates and remove depositors' preferences from shifting funds from banks to safer and higher-yielding money markets, which is also laughable because I don't think they know how money market funds work and who runs them. JP Morgan asked that's another note from Zero Hedge. It doesn't take rocket science to realize that just like in 2007, when the collapse of New Century finally shocked everyone into a state of brutal realization that the party was over, it's about to get a whole lot worse. Yeah, and that's a good analogy. It is similar to what happened in 2000 with New Century, because what New Century was doing was essentially this. They were holding a bunch of MBS as their capital reserves, and then people found out that, oh shit, the bank is insolvent. You better get your fucking money out. And now that's exactly what's happening. The only difference is that it's much worse in the sense that it is much more prevalent. Back in 2008, it was only a few banks with a few bad trades and a few exotic, derivatives deals. This is the most plain vanilla of vanilla trades. It's done by everybody. And they're all bad. They all fucked it up. And it's a hell of a lot worse than 2008. But in this case, how much worse? Well, according to Morgan Stanley, office and real retail property valuations can fall as much as from 40% from peak to trough. Creating a feedback loop of liquidations, bank failures, defaults, and from there, even more liquidations. Yeah, this right there is kind of the important part. There's their feedback loop bullshit too, by the way. Just like their fucking shit stupidity over there. The fucking referencing like 4 billion people are gone, by the way. Creating a feedback loop of liquidations, bank failures, and defaults. This is where you get the contagion kind of stuff. As the banks fail, they'll have a few things around. But when a lot of banks fail, well, that's when it becomes contagion with all the derivatives too. Especially that default part. And then you get even more liquidations. Especially just like in that movie clip we saw. It's called Margin Call for a reason. Because Because once this stuff starts happening, well, you have to liquidate when you get your margin going. So, U.S. securitized credit, commercial real estate, 1.35 to 1.46 trillion with a T. 30 to 32% of commercial real estate debt matures by year-end 2025, and banks hold 42 to 56% of maturing debt. So, and this is the even better part. When they're all holding it, it's like thinking of, let's say like you're in a fucking, let's say whatever it is. Say you're in some sort of store, and then the store is holding inventory that they don't want, and then they want to sell it to somebody else. You're not going to sell it to somebody else who's holding a lot of the stuff too that they don't want. So, when all of them are holding that much, you can pretty much tell that that stuff is worthless. Recent attention on U.S. commercial real estate is understandable as the asset class faces a trifecta of risk. Maturity walls are front-loaded. Acknowledging the variance in the numbers reported by different sources, we estimate that nearly 566 to 615 billion, 22 to 24% of the outstanding 2.6 trillion core CRE debt, including multifamily, matures by the year end of 2024, and another 275 to 340 billion, or 13%, is due in 2025. Due to bank dependence is high, both as direct lenders to the asset and also as buyers of both agency and non-agency CUs. And again, this is pretty much what I was saying. Well, all the banks are holding a ton of this shit. Who are they going to sell it to? They're not going to be selling it to each other. Banks hold 36 to 64% of the debt maturing each year and account for nearly half of the agency CMBS and 10 to 15% of the non-agency CMBS investor base. Valuation concerns have increased in specific sectors such as office and retail. Our equity colleagues expect a 30 to 40% peak to trough correction in both asset classes. Again, I'm still seeing these fucking retards here who shouldn't be here referencing why 250 million people are gone. They don't learn. And this is why you're in the situation you're in. Fucking retarded schizophrenic garbage. We are glad that 1 month after we called CRE the Big Short 3.0, one of the largest, 3.0, not 2.0, one of the, I said that earlier, one of the largest and most respected U.S. banks agrees. We are not glad that if, or rather, when we are proven, listen again, look at why they're poor to begin with. They beg to be made poor. Hope the microphone picked that up. If not, you can see it on the Browder Bridge, and they likely put this stuff up with. They never learn. That's why they're poor. You don't have this shit around me, and they never learn. We are not glad that if, or rather, when we are proven right that with trillions in loan maturities, which nobody wants to roll, CRE, or nobody's going to refinance, because who's going to be their due? Who's going to buy that crap? Just like you saw in this part. Commercial real estate is about to become the next subprime. The U.S. financial system will suffer another existential shock, or some would call it a credit event. And again, you can hear the marching morons be morons again, because they shouldn't be spying on me to begin with. And you hear the stupidity, as they desperately don't like hearing about reality while they spy on me. This is why they get what they get, including that little gaslighting shit insult with 250 million people and I'm gone. Morgan Stanley's conclusion. Commercial real estate needs to reprice, and alternative ways to refinance the debt are needed. And while it may not have been Morgan Stanley's intention, yelling repricing in a burning theater can be even worse than yelling fire. It's a green light for everyone else to start selling, something the collapse in real estate loans suggests may have already started. And that's exactly what I was saying at the beginning of this thing, too. Just in that title and just in the headline alone. Well, amid sudden Firesale real estate loans. Why did that happen? Whoop. Why did that happen? Because of exactly that. Again, I had some of these dipshits too, thinking they'd be following around like this fucking moron over here, these morons over here, by the way, and thought they'd be doing that stupid shit instead of actually donating. That's why you're in the situation you're in. You stupid garbage. And that's exactly why you deserve it. So you should have donated a long time ago. Should have paid your tithe too. And again, there's that stuff in the description below. You should really pay it. This stuff gets much worse if you don't, especially with your little schizophrenic sniffing. It's funny when they cry on social media about losing their houses too, or like in this New Century one. We can actually watch them crying about losing their bank accounts. Let me play that. Just because these stupid shit they still haven't learned around YouTube. By the way. Don't forget to buck and get your shirt. Make a donation. Let's watch them cry as they lose their money. That's what you get for ever having garbage around me and insulting me with that kind of crap. Watch them cry as they lose their fucking money. Talking shit. Here's a good one. 1,600 American bags. It's probably more than that. And that's from their CNBC cloud too. I think I played that. There were interviews with this stuff. I think I played one of them before too. The bank's been gone for fucking 16 years. Oh, financial limits. That's my mistake there. I'm sure that's a good one.
Investors will try and pick up the pieces after Tuesday's stock market breakdown. The Dow plummeted nearly 243 points. The Nasdaq plunged about 52. Part of the problem, more and more Americans are having trouble making their mortgage payment. Meanwhile, more troubles for subprime lender New Century, which says it's run out of money. It's being investigated by federal prosecutors for its accounting practices, and the New York Stock Exchange has suspended trading in shares of the company and is moving to delist it. Investors fear this home lending crisis will spread across the economy and could lead to a recession.
Oh, and there's their fucking idiots, dude. That's what they get for their fucking
U.S.
stupidity.
Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas.
Oh, by the way, that one, there's a good note about him taking fucking essentially bribes, dude. You know what you call that? The retards. The retards getting poorer over fucking contact lenses. Fucking warned. This is again when the stupid shit are fucking warned over and over again. Don't have your fucking garbage around me, especially with their shit gaslighting insults. And then they fucking wonder why I enjoy watching all their fucking filth get fucking poorer. Fucking garbage. They deserve it. Yeah, they're burning in hell too. Just like their financial system. Don't forget to pay your tithe. Especially like that dipshit following me around too. Are you staying? Fuck you. You know what's not staying? Your banks. Fucking shit. Again, it's essentially because of pieces of shit like that don't know their shit fucking places and fucking need to make sure I'm paying my goddamn money before they're all fucking poor. That's the craziest of it all. So, there's a fucking billion people on Earth that watch this garbage on the internet. Even this shadow banned YouTube stuff, where they essentially, screw me out of millions of dollars, billions actually. Just from the fucking IP there. And these people are led to believe that I shouldn't be paid my money. Yet they think I'm going to make sure they get paid. Stupidest, most deranged people on earth. That's the best too. When they cry about getting exactly what they deserve. Make sure to donate. It's in the link. It's in the Bitcoin wallet in the description there. I should actually put that in the videos.